This morning we're going to turn your attention to the book of Exodus and continue from where we've been meditating on the theme verse for this year, and same passage of scripture I want to start off with, and I speak to you about the evidence of the presence of God, evidence of His presence, and I'll be probing into the life of Moses and Israel and pick up a few lessons for us from there. I'm starting from Exodus chapter 33 and verses 16, and this is a conversation that God and Moses are having, and Moses, who's of all the human beings, has experienced God in His manifest presence on a repeated time, on a repeated occasion, would walk into the cloud, would walk into the thunder and all of that, and witness God, hear Him speak, would be with God for 40 days and 40 nights, would meet God in the tent of the meeting, and was having this close encounters with God. Of all the human beings and mentioned in the Bible, Moses was very peculiar because he was, as a human being, had the rich opportunity of living his life with God here on earth on a repeated number of times as he spent with Him. And as God looks at the people that are now disobedient to Him, and He says, I'm not coming, I'll send you an angel, but you go. But Moses, he seeks God. He says, no, you have to come. And these are the closing lines of his earnest request. He says, how will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? What else will set me apart? What else will set apart this nation? What else is unique about us except for your presence? What else stands out about us except for your glory, except for our God being among us? Moses, who's experienced God at very, very close quarters. This is the same God that Israel rejected, saying, if He speaks to us in this sound and this loudness, we will die. So Moses, you go talk and you come back and tell us what God is saying. But Moses alone, he would take his assistant Joshua and climb all the way up to the mountain and spend those days in the presence of God. Spend those hours in the presence of God. And now when God is saying, look, I'm not coming, Moses immediately says, no. Don't do that. You have to come with us. You have to come with us, because only when you come, everything is just different about us. Without you, we are all the same. We're all the same people of the earth. But with you, we become the distinguished people. We become the separated people. Saying, God, you have to be with us. And as Moses is praying out this prayer and requesting God, he's actually praying what God always desired. This is God's greatest desire with mankind. If you look from Genesis to Revelation, page by page, narrative by narrative, book by book, you will find that this is God's one promise to mankind. On a repeated occasion, to every character in the Bible, He said these simple words, I am with you. Every book you will find these lines, I am with you. Because this is God's greatest heart's desire, that He wants to be among His people. Because if He is among His people, and then the people experience Him in a very real, tangible sense. Look at the book of Genesis, and you find in the record that God came in the cool of the evening to the garden. Adam and Eve, who were human beings, were able to recognize that God is among them. Although we all believe here God is with us, Adam and Eve were able to quickly say, God has come, and they went and hid. Though we know in our mind, in our hearts, we know God is with us. It's one thing to know God is with us, one thing to know that He's here, and better run from here. As human beings, Adam and Eve experienced that. Come to the book of Exodus, you find God telling the nation of Israel, make a tabernacle, set up a tent, because I want to live among my people. I want to be among them. This is the camp. Put me right there. I want to live among them. In spite of all of the warnings that God gives, and then Israel goes its own way. You see in the book of Ezekiel, when all Israel is scattered across the nations, God comes back to Ezekiel and says, you know what? These are my people. I will bring them back. They are scattered, but I will gather them. I will give them a new heart. I will write my law on their heart, and I will live among them. They will be my people, I will be their God, and I want to live among them. And then you find the fullest expression of that comes through in the New Testament when Jesus comes on the scene. In the book of John, if you read first chapter, it says, the Word was with God, the Word became flesh and then dwelt among us. In other translations, you find that He tabernacled. Everyone say tabernacle. He pitched, He set His tent among the people. In Jesus Christ, as he walked, talked, healed, did all of that, it was the fullest expression of God being with us. That's why his name is Emmanuel, which means that was the fullest expression. And then when Jesus dies and rises again, he gives his promise to the disciples and the church, say, I will send you my Holy Spirit and I will always be with you. I will always be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will always be with you. This has been God's greatest heart's desire, that he wants to be among his people. This year we are believing this is a promise for us this year, that his presence is with us. How many of you say in January you already seen a lot of God's presence? Anyone here? Very few of you. But the promise is for all of the church, just to say it's for all of us. The manifest presence of God is for all of us to experience, to know that like Adam and Eve, God has come. God is among us, to, in our rightful senses, to know that this God is among us. But the instruction is simply this. In James chapter 4 verse 8, you'll find James writing and saying, come close to God and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between whom? God and the world. Your loyalty is divided between God and the world. In other words, God wants to be among us. God is present among us. God has pitched his tent among us. His presence is with us, but he expects us to come close to him. He says, you draw near to me. A.W. Tozer, famous preacher, he said these lines so in a very profound manner. He says, every man is as close to God as he wants to be. In other words, what is A.W. Tozer saying? Simply saying, God is already here among us, but we can only experience him as much as we want to. We can only see him, experience him as much as we want to. God in his grace has made the access available to all of us. He says, come reason with me, come talk to me, come fellowship with me. His presence is here. He says, I am approachable. You can come to me, but we can only come close to him. You can only experience him as much as we wanted. As much as we wanted. And so this morning I want to take you into the life of Moses and look at the narrative in Exodus and see what happens. What is the evidence that we've been close to God? What is the evidence of us frequenting into the presence of God? What changes? What can you look at and say, yes, the presence of God is manifest. The presence of God is being experienced. I know you can use any character in the Bible and say many things, but I'm going to focus just on Moses and Exodus narrative and bring 4 simple lessons from his life. Firstly, when we've been frequenting the presence of God, we begin to be moved by the concerns of God. Everyone say concerns. Loudly. Come on. Even more louder. We are moved by what? We are of God's concerns. We are moved by God's concerns. Look at this narrative of Exodus chapter 3 when Moses meets God in the most tangible manner for the first time in his life as it's recorded. Exodus chapter 3 verses 7 to 11. This is when Moses is in the desert. He's taking care of the sheep and he's living in the land of Midian and he is almost settled there now. That's become his home. But one day as he's in the wilderness, he sees a bush that is on fire but not being consumed. It's a spectacle for him. So he approaches it to see what it is. And as he comes close, he hears a voice. Leave your sandal and come forward. You're standing on holy ground. And as he leaves his footwear and approaches a little more, he begins to hear this voice tell him something. Said, I want to draw your attention to that conversation. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So can we all read together? So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. We'll leave the names for later. Verses 9. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Can we all read together? 1, 2, 3. So now I am sending you to the Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And 11th verse. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, Moses is here tending his sheep and is in the daily chores of his life, and he sees a burning bush, approaches the burning bush, and as he comes closer, he hears a voice saying, look, my people, everyone say my people, My people are under oppression. They are being driven by their masters. They're in slavery. They're right there in Egypt. And Moses, I heard their cry. I heard their cry. I want you to go. I am concerned about them. I want you to go. I'm broken with what has happening to them. I want you to go. And Moses says, who am I that I should go? That's the very same place I ran out and came from. And now you're asking me to go back there. God says, I will be with you. If I was in Moses' place, I would have said, your people, your problem, you take care of it. Why are you involving me in this? I would have been just like Moses, arguing with God and giving him good reasons why he should not recruit me for this task. Moses goes on at least 5 times arguing with God and saying, no, wrong person, wrong person, wrong person, wrong person. God says, you are the person, you are the person. And 6th time God says, you better be quiet. He gets angry and says, this is the last time you're talking to me about this. You get going from here. Sometimes I talk to my son like that. And then you find Moses says, oh, okay, I'm going. And then he finds Aaron and then gathers the elders of Israel as he travels all the way there, tells them, see, God has heard your cry. And he does all these miracles to prove to them that he truly heard from God and the nation. And the elders say, they bow down, worship and say, we understand that God is concerned about us. Oftentimes when we think about the presence of God, everyone say the presence of God. When we think about the presence of God, we localize it to a setting like this where we have some time of worship, maybe some time of prayer. And we often think about the presence of God as a place where in which we can offload our burdens. We come to the presence of God to take off our burdens, cast it at His feet and say, now I am free. I was sad, but when I go to the presence of God, I rejoice. I was mourning, but when I go into the presence of God, I come out joyful. I was broken, but when I go into the presence of God, I come out healed. I was sick, I go into the presence of God and I come out restored. I go into the presence of God and life changes for me. It becomes better than what it was before I entered into the presence of God. But I want you to open your eyes to this truth of God calling people into His presence. It's one thing for us to go into the presence of God with our concerns. It's totally another game when God meets you in your path, puts a burning bush, calls you into His presence. This is what He does. He deposits concerns on our heart. He didn't give one chance for Moses to say what he needed. He didn't give one opportunity for Moses to voice out concern and say, I need a ride back to Egypt. I need this kind of hotel. I need this. Nothing. He says, I am with you. You're going. Oftentimes, we think we approach God because we have concerns. Everyone say concerns. We approach God because we have struggles. We approach God because we are burdened. We approach God because we have issues to solve. I'm calling out the church this morning. God's presence is among us means He is calling us to His presence to deposit His concerns on our heart. He's calling us into His presence to burden us with what is burdening His heart. You look at the nation, look at Ezekiel, look at the Jeremiahs, look at the Isaiahs. Whenever they entered into the presence of God, they came out weeping, broken, crushed because God would put so much weight on them and said, this is what I want you to do. For us, we think we enter the presence of God and come out dancing. I know there is an aspect of that. We cast all our cares on Him, that is there. But we as a church ready to take on the concerns of God on our heart? Are you with me? Are we as a church come to His presence when He calls? Moses would go into the presence of God whenever God called. God would say, come. Would go up all the way, climb up the hill and go and stay with God for 40 days. He would stay there, linger on there, and God would put on him all that God wanted him to do. Burden him. And you find Moses altered everything about his life. He had to leave Midian. He had to go back to Egypt. He had to plead before people. He had to say, this is what God is saying. This is what God is saying. Everything about his life changed because he entered into the presence of God when God called him. So my question to us is, what are our concerns? Why do we go and pray? Why do we call on the name of the Lord? If it's only for the concerns that are of our heart, hear me out carefully, then we have not yet fully enjoyed His presence. We have not yet enjoyed His presence. The Lord would call Moses into His presence and then put on them such burden, it would crush him. Imagine God telling you, hey, I'm calling you out of the desert and 25 lakh people I'm giving to your hand. And I want you to carry them all the way there. Can't God do it by changing the place just like this? Tell me, couldn't God do it all by Himself? But God calls people. People who are willing to carry the concerns of His heart. God calls people. God calls us, God calls His church to carry the concerns of His heart. If our hearts are burdened with only concerns of our well-being, we will never realize the promise that His presence is with us. We will never realize the promise that His presence is with us. Firstly, I said God is concerned about people and He wants us to move us with His concerns. Secondly, we are moved by a courageous compassion. Everyone say courageous compassion. Loudly, courageous compassion. These are two words that you don't generally put them together to use them in one sense. But this is very, very vivid and very, very visible in the life of Moses. And please follow me with this conversation as I stop. Wherever I stop, just follow up on the words, okay? This is a passage of scripture where Moses is now standing before God, and God writes these 10 commandments, this code of conduct, as you have to say it, and gives it to Moses and said, this is the way I want my people to live. Everyone say, my people. This is God saying, my people will live the way I want them to live. So this is the code of conduct for my people. And as He gives this code of conduct to Moses' hands, look at what God is telling Moses. Because by now, the nation of Israel has done something which is much to the displeasure of our Lord. And this is what God begins to tell Moses. The Lord said to Moses, go down because, whose people? Go down because your people whom have become, they have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and I made them as an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to its sacrifice and said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Verses 9. I have seen these people, the Lord said to Moses. They are what? Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, that I may destroy them. Then I will what? Make you into a great nation. Everyone say great nation. God is looking at Moses and saying, look, the people you brought, the people you brought out of Egypt, your people you brought out of Egypt, now have turned against me, and I will eliminate them. I will make you into a great nation, because these are stiff-necked people. These are rebellious people. I'm not going to come with you. If I come among them, I will kill them. So I'm not going to come. I will finish them. I will make you into a great nation. Now look at what Moses responds. Verses 32, verses 11 to 12. Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. He said, why should your anger burn against whom? With great power and Moses looks at God and says, hello sir, my people are. They are your people. You brought them out of Egypt. My power, your power brought them out of Egypt. I didn't do this. They are rebellious, they are stiff-necked, and you say, your people. These are first your people. You brought them out of Egypt. And look at the conversation that he begins to have after that. Verses 12. Why should the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger. Relent and do not bring disaster on whose people? Then the Lord relented. When you look at this conversation, you'll find this Moses, he was leading a 25 lakh amount of people who would always grumble, who would always murmur, who would always find fault with Moses' way of leading. They would say, no, this is wrong, that is wrong, you didn't give this, you should have left us there, this is not there, that is not there. And God is now looking at Moses and saying, you know what, I will finish all these people and I will make you into a great nation. If I was Moses, I would have said, glad you realized that, now give me the promise, I'm running from here. You do whatever you want with them. But look at what Moses says. He says, God, these are your people. These are people you brought out. And then he goes on to say, why should you punish them? Don't punish them. Don't punish them. Don't finish them. Don't finish them, because if you do this, the world will know that you have not fulfilled your word. So don't do this to your people. Oftentimes when we go into the presence of God, we go into the presence of God with an attitude that if I ask God, my God can show anger on people. My God can show his wrath on people. My God can punish people. But look at Moses, who had the opportunity of receiving a promise from God saying, I will bless you, I will make you into a great nation. Just get rid of these people. Moses and I could have easily said, yes, you are right, bang on. You could do that easily, please do that fast. But Moses instead says, God, please have mercy. When we've been frequenting the presence of God, we begin to develop a courage to be able to stand in the presence of God and plead for his compassion. One thing is to have access to the presence of God to pray. The second thing, you'll find that you have access, but now you have courage to say, God, I plead your mercy. I plead your compassion. I plead your forgiveness. I plead your grace upon the lives of these people. Are you here with me? Are you here with me? We begin to develop a confidence to say, God, please, please don't be angry. Don't be angry. You become like Abraham said, Lord, 50 people, 40 people, 30 people, 10 people, one person. Please don't show your anger. Please don't punish people. Have mercy on people. I'm not saying that God is fickle-minded that you can change him by bargaining. I'm saying because you've been long enough in the presence of God, his compassion rubs off on you so much that you begin to plead for people on behalf of them and say, God, please, please be merciful to these people. Are you with me? Oftentimes we hear believers, good believers saying, hey, if you touch me, you know what my God can do? He's mighty in battle. You cheated me, a child of God, my Father will take care of you. Oftentimes we somehow want God to unleash his power so much. But if you've been long enough, hear me again, if you've been long enough in the presence of God, if you have spent that hours with God, you would begin to change on the inside. And when you see people who are stiff-necked, rebellious, all in arms to finish your life and can throw the stones at you and end your life, you're able to stand before God who has the power to do it and say, Lord, please forgive them. Are you with me? Moses takes it one notch higher. Chapter 32 verse 31. He comes down the mountain and he sees all of this drama unfold, all the singing and all the idol worship happening. He looks at Aaron and says, what did you do? What is that you allowed? And Aaron looks at Moses and has a very interesting conversation. He says this, I didn't do anything, pa. They gave gold, I put in the fire and out came the calf. I didn't do anything more than this. I just did what they asked me to do. I took the gold and put that, the calf came and they worshipped. I didn't do anything. And Moses says, hello. Whoever is on the Lord's side, come aside, and whoever is not on the Lord's side, step aside. And then he issues a command to go kill them. And then you find the 3,000 people die that day. And then Moses goes back to people and says, God said he won't come with you. God said he will finish you, but I'm going to go ask for favor again. And he goes back up the mountain and look at what he says. Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now, please, what? And next lines are even more. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written. Moses is saying, God, you are angry with them, forgive them. And if you are not forgiving them, punish me first. If you want to do anything to them, first do it to me. If you want to hit them, hit me first. But please, forgive them. See, this is the evidence that you've been in and out of the presence of God. That you stayed long enough in the presence of God where his mercy, compassion rubs off on you. That you're able to say, Lord, I'll lose my life, no problem. I will give up, but please have mercy on these people. Please have compassion on these people. Are you with me? When we are in the presence of God, the evidence is this. Our hearts begin to burn with the concerns of God's heart. God's burden becomes our burden. He's able to deposit. I like what Bob Pierce, the founder of World Vision, said this. Let the things that break the heart of God break my heart. Break my heart. And then when you're in the presence of God, you're able to stand in front of God, intercede for people, stand and plead forgiveness for people. So are you ready for some burning bushes to appear here and there on your daily life? And there was stunned silence. Are we willing for God to redirect us? Are we willing for God to relocate us? Because he has a work to do. Not because we have work to do. He has work to do. And he says, I'm calling you. Are we willing to be redirected, relocated, just pulled out of an atmosphere, pulled out of a situation, put somewhere else because God has purposes. Because God has reasons. And after that, the people that he sends you to are not the people who is going to be pally with you. They are the ones who want to take the stones and beat you up. And then you stand in the presence of God and say, please forgive them. Please, if you read any of the missionary stories, if you read any of the people who came to India, you'll find that we are what we are is because people interceded on our behalf. People just laid down their lives in the presence of God and saying, please have mercy. Please have mercy. Please have mercy. Thirdly, when we are in and out of the presence of God, the evidence is this. We are moved by careful instructions. Everyone say careful instructions. Please follow my instructions. Say it loudly. Careful instructions. Loudly. Careful instructions. I'll try and capture all what happens in all the way from Exodus to Deuteronomy. And this is a sampling of it. Exodus 34:12. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here. I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instructions." And you'll find that all the way from Exodus till Deuteronomy, every time Moses enters into the presence of God, there is clear-cut instructions. Although there is a recognized 10 commandment list that Moses gave to the nation of Israel as God handed over to him, you'll find there are almost about 6,000 instructions in the Old Testament. 6,000 instructions pertaining to almost all of life. You will find God telling them what to eat, what to drink, when to celebrate, when not to celebrate, what to do when one is happy, when what to do when is sad, when what to do when is going through a sickness, what kind of clothes to wear, what kind of ceiling to have, what kind of animals to use, what kind of plates to have, everything, what kind of length of garments the Levites have to have. There was barrage, there was thousands of instructions pertaining to all of life. What meat to eat, why not to eat, how to eat, how do you stand and eat, what kind of utensils you use. Everything God deposited saying, I have to be among you and you have to be my people, then you have to be separated from the rest of this world. He would say 6 days you work, 7 days you don't work, I'll provide. Take only what is needed for tonight, today. If you take a little more than what you need for today, the worms will come. God is not being stingy. God is being saying, I know what I have to give you tomorrow. I'll take care of you today. I'll take care of your today. And you find God is very, very precise. He puts the dots on the T's. He puts the dots on the J's. He ensures that everything is down to the last instance in life. Clear instructions. And every time Moses would go, he would come out with instructions. Hear me out carefully. The evidence that we've been in the presence of God is this, that we begin to have an instructed ear. Everyone's instructed ear. That we begin to live not in ambiguity anymore. We begin to live not in the know-how of what is happening around us, but we live in the know-how fully of this is what God is doing. This is what He wants me to do. This is what He wants the church to do. This is how He wants a family to be. So we live instructed lives. It's sad to say that many believers who walk up to us for prayer or talking to us, most of them say this, I don't know what's happening next. I don't know what God is doing with me. I don't know the will of God. Moses never said, I don't know. He simply said, Lord, teach me your ways. Everyone say, teach me your ways. Teach me your ways, Lord. Teach me your ways. And I pray that will be the prayer of our church throughout the days of our life, that teach me your ways, Father. Teach me your ways, because without His instructions, we can't move. His instructions are almost counter logic. You find that army is coming against you and God says, Moses, raise your hand and stand. For how long, Lord? You raise. As long as you raise, you will win. That's not my problem, your problem. You stand for how long you want. And then he finds 2 people to hold his hand up, and as long as his arm is up, you find the battle is being won. Lord, there are serpents around us. Okay, make a bronze serpent and make it stand. Lord, what are you saying? We would have called the forest people and said, please take care of the snakes. God is saying, no, you make a bronze snake and make it stand. Careful instructions God gives. Most of the time you might not understand with your logic, but if you are able to linger long enough in the presence of God, you will hear instructions. God is not a nagging God, but He's a God who instructs. He's Father enough. I've been saying this in the morning. He's a Father enough to tell you what you should wear each day. Are you hearing me? Girls get up and look at their mom and say, please tell me how I look. He's a father and a mother enough to ask Him, what should I wear today? And I don't know if it has happened to you, but He tells you. Google Maps can get you lost anywhere. But I'm telling you, our God, He will tell you which road to take if you ask Him. If we ask Him, you hear instructions. It's sad to say that many believers in the church, many of us struggle with hearing the voice of God. It's not because God is not speaking, it's because we have not stayed long enough. Because we have not stayed long enough to hear instructions. He's Father enough to tell you what to eat. He's Father enough to tell you where to put your money. He's Father enough to tell you what kind of job you have to do. He's Father enough to tell you how to do your job. He's Father enough to carry you. He's Father enough to always be with us. He instructs carefully. I had times when you look at the Google map and find out this road is all blocked. You ask, Lord, how do I go? He'll tell you, take the right. I'll take the right. And you reach faster than what Google map tells you. It has happened on many an occasion. You ask God, He will tell you. Ask God, He will tell you. Careful instructions come from God in heaven. Are you with me? Are you with me? That's the reality in the New Testament, that God gives clear outline of how His church has to be. He tells families have to be like this. Husbands, you have to be like this. This is the way. If I am your God, husbands, you have to be like this. Wives, if you have to be my child, wife, you have to be like this. Children, if you say you are born in a Christian family, you're growing up as believers, you have to be like this. God expects us to simply follow instructions, and I'm telling you, God backs it up with all of His power. There are clear instructions. There are clear instructions in the New Testament for all of us, for churches, for families, for individuals. Fourthly, 3 things I told you. First, we are moved by what? We are moved by, come on, it's very concerning, you are very soft. Tell me loudly. 1, 2, 3 start. We are moved by? I said, what is the first point? We are moved by concerns of God's heart. We are moved by, secondly, we are moved by a courageous compassion. We are challenged in our spirits to be able to stand before God. And thirdly, we are moved by careful instructions. And finally, we are moved by close range battles. Everyone say close range battles. This I'm taking from the narrative of the Red Sea and the nation of Israel, Exodus chapter 14. This is when Moses is just leading these people out of Israel, out of Egypt to a promised land. And they have carried everything that they could. And they're now on the march. And all they know is they landed and they arrived to the shore of the Red Sea, because God redirected them and put them on the shore of the Red Sea. And lo and behold, as they're standing at the Red Sea and wondering what God is going to do next, they hear Pharaoh's army behind them. They hear the sound and all the horses. And they're looking at Pharaoh, looking at Moses and wondering, hey, this leader of ours, he said he is only a stick in his hand. And he's saying the pillar of cloud is going. Something angelic is happening around us. But all I know is Pharaoh and army is coming behind us. There's the noise of the sea before us, but the noise of the army behind us. And they look at what their argument with Moses is. As Pharaoh approached, Israelites looked up and there were Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing out of Egypt? Some of us are very worried about a grave. 12th, didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would be better for us to be serving the Egyptians than to die in the desert. These people are saying, why did you bring us out? You have a stick in your hand. The cloud is there, but this army is real, is coming behind us. It's just behind us. And then look at what happens as Moses goes and prays. I haven't put it up on the screen wantedly, but this is what Moses goes to God and says, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing? You told me to bring these people out and now you send the army behind us. What are you doing? In a very candid way, God says, why are you crying? Why are you crying? He's saying, Lord, these people, all of them are ready to finish me. And you're saying, why are you crying? God says this, stand up, take your place, take positions. You see, stand firm and see the deliverance of the Lord. It's almost as if, please everyone stand up, gather fast, because I know God is doing something. It seems I can't see him, but he's here. Please stand up. The army is coming. They are like, what are you expecting to happen? The army is closing in on us and expecting us to stand in line for what? And then you see what happens as Moses obeys God. Chapter 14 verses 19 to 20. Then the angel of the Lord who had been traveling the angel of the Lord who had been traveling in front of Israel's army withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, everyone said throughout the night. Throughout the night, loudly, throughout the night. The cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other side. So neither went near the other all night long. Look at that miracle. As Moses in obedience to God just stands up, makes everyone stand and stand in line. The angel which was traveling in front goes and stands behind and causes a separation between them and the army, Egyptian army. And the whole night, everyone say whole night. Whole night there was a darkness between the two and one could not approach the other. And the whole night a breeze blew, wind blew and separated the Red Sea for the Israelites to pass through. Oftentimes when we think of the presence of God, we understand the presence of God to be this. Because He is with us, the enemy can't do anything to us. But if you look at the scripture, this is reality. That when God is with His people, the enemy will do what he can to still keep attacking us. He'll still cause fear. He'll still cause anxiety. He'll still cause stressful times. He'll still cause times when we are breaking down and fearful of death itself. But hear me out carefully. True to every character that is there in the Bible, true to every promise that's there in the Bible, God causes a separation between His people and the enemies that are against us. Pastor Mohan was talking to all of us as pastors on December last week. He reminded us this. He said the army of the nation of Israel had to face many a battle. They had to face many armies, many enemies. They had to win after armies. But we as believers have only one enemy, and that one enemy is already defeated at the cross. We have only one enemy, and that enemy is already defeated. That simply means separation is already created between us and the enemy. But listen to this, the enemy will still come against us. The battle will still rage. The arrows will be still pointed towards us. But hear me out carefully. Even if the enemy can come close to us, he still can't strike us. He still can't destroy us. He can come close to us, but he has no access to us. Because the Lord is among us. Moses was saying, God, where are you? God said, just stand. Go, touch the water. Go, touch the water. I'm telling you, some of us are already in the middle of battle and asking, why is this happening to me? I've been praying, I've been in life group, I've been the most faithful person in the life group. I've understood the teaching of all of that. And why is this happening to me? And when people ask me that question, I say, because you're doing that only, Satan is coming after you. Because if you didn't do that, the enemy will never come after you. There's no point chasing your life. There's no point chasing your life. If we are actually following God seriously, the enemy will come against us at all quarters. Are you hearing me? And if battles are not happening, then we are not on the battlefield either. Are you with me? Close range battles are a reality when God is among us, but rest assured, our God is mighty in battle. Our God is the mighty warrior. Our God can rout the enemies. Our God can scatter the enemies. The arrows will come against us, but rest assured, He's our shield and refuge. Our enemies will encamp against us, but our God is a God who scatters the enemies. So don't be afraid of fearful times. Don't be afraid of threats. Don't be afraid of challenge to life. I speak over all of us this morning what God told Moses. Stand up. Stand firm, see the deliverance of God. Stand up, stand firm, see the deliverance of God. For some of us it's sicknesses and you're saying God is not healing me at all. I'm telling you, even if sickness takes our life, we still have hope in heaven with God. The day we realize, even if I'm sick and if I die of a sickness, I'm still God's child, I still have eternity with God, we will live this life even more joyfully. For many of us, sometimes when sicknesses happen or untoward things happen, we think God is angry against us. I'm telling you, God is not punishing us. He has punished Jesus for us. And because of Jesus' obedience, we can walk in grace. We can walk in mercy. And the enemy comes against us to destroy our faith. I'm telling you and telling all of us, let's stand firm. Let's stand firm because God is among us. Because He tells, lift your hand, the battle will be won. You walk around the Jericho walls, it will fall. You do this, it will happen. You put a bronze up and it will happen. I'll fight your battles. God is not just fighting His battles from heaven. He'll make you and I take our positions. Recently I was asking God for a favor for me because I was going to meet some people. And I was saying, Lord, please do this for me even before I go to speak to people. And God said, though I told Moses I will do something, I had to make him stand in front of Pharaoh. Could I have done it by myself? I could have done it, but Moses had to stand in front of Pharaoh. Then I said, Lord, okay, I'll go stand, and then the rest of it you do. For all of us, fearful times will come. We'll have to stand in front of people who are have the power to finish us, but God will fight our battles. God will fight our battles. The battles will rage, but the battles will be won. Because our God is mighty in battle. 4 things I told you. 1, when we're frequenting the presence of God, we are moved by what breaks God's heart. Not just my car, my house, my children, my needs. You are able to look at people and say, God, you're sending me to them, I'll go. You're sending me to these people, I'll go. I'll take leave today just to be of help to these people because God, you are concerned about them. Because you are concerned about them. It is inconvenience for me, but it's God's concern, so I will do it. That we have become courageous people who are able to stand before God and say, Lord, please have mercy. Please have mercy. Don't be angry. Please have mercy. That we are able to say to the point, please, Father, don't punish them. Punish me if you have to. Then we are saying, God, tell me, I will do it. Careful instructions. Careful instructions. And Moses, in a stark contrast, also stands as an example of not listening to careful instructions. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? When God told him to speak to the stone, he goes and hits the rock. Someone who has carefully followed all of instructions misses out on one instruction. And God is interested in clear instructions. Are you willing to listen to the Lord today? Are you willing to listen to the Lord today? Fourthly and finally, close range battles. The fist will come all the way to your face, but will not strike you. Psalm 91 says this: He is our place of safety. There will be pestilence in the darkness. There will be terror in the night. There will be plagues near our tent, but it will not befall us. It will not destroy us. Even though this terror is a real thing, you open the door and you see the enemy standing in front of you. I'm telling you, separation will be created between us and the enemy.